We didn't have money. I was not athletic, and I wasn't a good student, so I was kind of nobody. I had an idea to do shows for civic clubs, Kiwanis, Rotary, and like that. I put the shows together, and I was the master of ceremonies, and I handled the comedy. I was going to do To Be or Not to Be out of Hamlet, but I couldn't figure out how to make it funny because just doing it with a southern accent didn't seem funny. So I asked this same man, Bob Armstrong, to come down and tell me the story of Hamlet. And he did, and I wrote down the names of the characters and how it happened. So that week I made up a monologue about the play Hamlet. And I did it on a Saturday night and got big laughs. And I knew I had something. And I did this football monologue. And there was a guy there who had a little record label. He ran out and he said, "Let's record that." I didn't really think the football was going to do much, but it took off. The football then took me to New York. The first job I had in New York was on the Ed Sullivan Show. I don't really remember the appearance on the Ed Sullivan Show. All I remember is I had a blue mark, and the last thing I saw was this guy going like that. And I walked out, and I never got a laugh. These two fellows, Ainsley Pryor and Bob Armstrong, keep coming into my life. They told me that I must get a book called No Time for Sergeants and read it. And I said, if there's anything ever for me, this is it. It's going to be a play, a movie, and a television show. The first day of rehearsal of the play No Time for Sergeants at the Alvin Theater, this little man came out, he was a young fellow then, but he put on an old voice and introduced Will Stockdale. And the second day of rehearsals, I went up to Don Knotts and I said, "Excuse me, ain't you Wendy Wales?" And that's when we became friends. During the first year of the play, he came in and to my dressing room and he did a little bit for me to see if it was funny, if I thought it was funny. It was a guy who had never made a speech before was called on to make a speech, and it was that shaky man. Within a matter of days, he was on the Steve Allen Show. Bob Armstrong, R.G. Armstrong, was in Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. And Kazan started telling him this story about this bum who becomes bigger than life on television. And he asked Bob if he knew anybody who could play that, and he said, "Yes, Andy Griffith can play that." I knew I had to do something outrageous or I wouldn't get the part, because everybody in town was out for it. So I told him how Oral Roberts was a healer. And I said, he hasn't lined up on that stage up there. And they come up and he talks to them and he prays over them. And he takes their head in their hands and he said, "Heal!" Well, I had Elia Kazan's head in my hands. And his eyes were like that. Next day he said, "I want you." It was a show called Destry. It was a musical. Michael Kidd choreographed and directed it. Then the actors went on. The actors said they were locked out, and the producers said they were on strike. When we went back, there was a Western Union on the board saying Destry will close Saturday night, such and such a date. And thank God they did, because I started the Griffith show 3 weeks later. I went to see Abe Lastfogel. And I said, "Mr. Lastfogel, I've struck out in movies and now on Broadway, and I don't want to go back to nightclubs. So maybe I better try television." I saw this man at the stage door when I ran up to my dressing room, and I said to Art Lund, I said, "Who was that?" He said, "Sheldon Leonard," before I went back down there. And we talked, and then he came back to New York a second time at my request and told me the story again, and I said, "Okay, let's go with it." I did the pilot when I had a week off from Destry. Danny Thomas was driving from Florida to up north. And he went through Mayberry, which was, I was on patrol, and he called it a speed trap. And I wanted to fine him, and he didn't want to pay the fine, so he went to jail. It wound up that Andy was right and Danny was wrong, and Danny admitted it. And so that was the pilot. It was on Danny's show. It was a spinoff. Francis Bavier and Ronny Howard and me were the only regulars. Don Knotts saw that on the air, the pilot on the air, and called me down here And I said, I didn't know you were out of work. He says, yes, Steve was canceled. I said, call Sheldon. Don joined the company. The second episode was called Manhunt, and I knew by that episode, I knew that Don should be the comic and I should play straight for him, and that made all the difference. All the difference. Then Mayberry became a living town. We had all the comic characters that came on, I played straight for them. So Mayberry really was the star of the show. Sheldon actually said one time, I think we misnamed this show. Should have been called Mayberry to start with. The first day, I didn't have much to say at all. Artie Stander, Danny Thomas, and Sheldon Leonard yelled at one another all day. And I asked Sheldon if I could talk to him at the end of the day, and he walked me to the gate. I said, if this is what television is, I don't think I can handle it. He said, Andy, the star dictates what the attitude will be on the set. He said, Danny likes to yell, so we all yell. If you don't want to yell, nobody will yell. That's the way it was. We shot with one camera. That was Sheldon's choice, and it was fortunately my choice too. I love to work with one camera. Friday we rehearsed, and we shot Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Sheldon would come down. We read 2 scripts on Thursday, one to be shot a week away and one to be shot that following Monday. And Sheldon, we'd read the script, and Sheldon would give his notes on it, and he would leave. And that's what was so appealing about Sheldon. He'd give his notes on it and leave, and we would either accept what he had to say or not, and nothing was ever said about it. Sheldon never mentioned it. We'd either take his idea or not. At first, Sheldon didn't want it to be in North Carolina. He just wanted it to be somewhere in the South. And I hate these made-up names. So we did have Mount Pilot, which there is a place called Pilot Mountain up near Mount Airy. But I gradually started slipping in real towns in North Carolina, like Asheville and Raleigh and Siler City. They think that I based the show on Mount Airy. And I've argued about this too long. I don't care. Let them think what they want to think. There's a barber up there who says he cut my hair when I was a child. Hell, he'd have to be 115 years old. Ronny has a wonderful mother and father. That is perhaps the principal reason he turned out the way he did. He was always a good kid. And he never considered me his father. He considered me not even a father figure. He considered me his friend. Don had been on for 5 years, and he came to my house, and he said if I would be partners with him, he would stay. And I was afraid because of what happened to Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis. As it turns out, I think I was right. We would be 2 old men dependent on one another who neither one of us could get any work. He got a deal at Universal to make some pictures, and the first one was Ghost and Mr. Chicken. Don was gone, and it had gone into color from black and white, and it was getting like a regular situation comedy. And I was afraid I wasn't holding up my end of it anymore. And also I wanted to try my wings outside Mayberry RFD. That ran 3 years and was number 6 for the year when it was canceled. Fred and CBS were tired of being called the Hee Haw Network, so they got rid of all their rural-oriented shows with one blow. I played a lawyer in Fatal Vision, and Brandon Tartikoff saw something he liked. So he called Fred Silverman and said, see if you can get Andy to play a lawyer. Matlock is very bright, he's very cheap, he's very vain, all the things I'm not. And I enjoyed that character a lot. Each Saturday and Sunday morning I would learn the courtroom scene, which we would shoot on Monday. It would take me 8 to 10 hours to learn it. I can't read and do a performance. So I would learn the whole thing. I never worried about the law. They say that Raymond Burr did. I knew that somebody else was there to look after the law part. I just wanted it to be entertaining within that framework. It looks like an ordinary little town, but it has a little border of insanity around it. And all those fine comedic actors like Don Knotts and Howard McNear and Jim Neighbors, and all of them made it. They represented that little insane border that was Mayberry. Ted Turner told me that the Griffith show helped him start his network because he could afford it. See, and people watched it. They still watch it. We didn't know that when we started it that it was going to last that long or influence so many people. We were just trying to do a good show. But it has.